clutter. So I turned this room into the ultimate minimalist game room. So today we're going to go on a little tour of the full setup with an overview of everything in my collection and how I put it all together. So what do you say we get into the video? Alright, so kicking off the tour, first we're going to start on the left-hand side of the room and we're going to go through the consoles and the TV and my whole setup. Then we're going to go through the games and then the retro computer over here in the corner, which I'm really excited to share. And then we're going to go through the Gundam cabinet and my closet where I have a bunch of extra goodies and things in storage that I'm excited to share with you guys. Alright, so in this corner, I've got two acrylic magazine stands. These are just displays. It's not to hold the collection, but I think it's a really nice clean way to have a few choice pieces out on display. And I've got some stuff like Shenmue World, PlayStation magazine from Japan, Sega Saturn magazine also from Japan, and some other books and magazines. In this corner, I just have a little shelf with some miscellaneous collectibles, amiibos, and things like that, Burger King toys. But one cool thing I like to share is this little Street Fighter 2 keychain, which I just think is so cool. And then turning and moving over here, I have my Sony Trinitron and all of my console setup. So we'll get into how that's set up now. I have a 32-inch Sony Trinitron TV. It's a CRT. It looks fantastic. And it's sitting on top of an IKEA Kallax that's been reinforced with a solid piece of plywood in the back, which I'll go to in a bit. And then underneath, I've got all of my classic consoles as well as a couple on the side. So on the left, starting from the top left, I have the Sony PlayStation 2, of course, a PS2 Slim that's actually a Japanese version. I have my N64, a Sega Saturn, a Dreamcast, an original Xbox, a GameCube, and a Wii. Now, everything that's here right now is hooked up and running through component cables, so it's either been RGB mounted or component mounted or set up with component cables, and it runs into a auto switcher. I believe it's called the G-Comp. I'll see if I can find a picture and throw it up. And basically what that does is whatever console I turn on, it automatically displays on the TV. So you don't have to go through any complicated switching or unplugging or plugging in consoles. It's all automatic. So one more thing about this setup is all of the consoles are hot swappable. So what I mean by that is here where I have the Sega Saturn, you can easily swap it to the Genesis because the HD Retrovision component cables for the Saturn are basically the same as for the Genesis, specifically the Model 2, but also the Model 1 with an adapter. Also for the N64, we know that the N64, the GameCube, the Super Nintendo, they all have a similar shared cable, right? So for the N64, it's RGB modded, and that works great with swapping it in and out with the Super Nintendo. So I'll swap out Super Nintendo here, and you guys kind of get the picture. I'll be able to swap in and out systems in places where it really makes sense to have those cables be shared and whatnot, because you can only have, I believe, 8 consoles hooked up to the G-Comp at the same time, and also I have a limited number of cubbies to work with. Now underneath each cubby, I've also got these little baskets which have all the accessories and, you know, controllers, adapters, things like that, memory cards for the consoles. That will be in the vertical column. So that one is PlayStation 2 and N64. Here you've got Genesis and Saturn, Dreamcast. This one has Xbox, GameCube, Wii, so on and so forth. And it just helps keep things organized. One other thing I want to note is the GameCube, the Xbox, and the Dreamcast are all hooked up online, and you can play games online with them. The GameCube and the Xbox are hardwired to Ethernet, which I have run behind these game shelves in advance of putting this room together. But the Dreamcast is actually on a Wi-Fi module that's running off of a DreamPi, which is an emulator that emulates a dial-up modem for Dreamcast games. Above the TV, I have this little display shelf that actually has some of my favorite items in the whole game room, specifically these Nights into Dreams vinyl records, as well as Phantasy Star vinyl, and this really awesome Virtua Fighter plastic file that I found in Japan for like 100 yen at a Super Potato. Absolutely love that. Samurai Showdown soundtrack and limited run games. collector's edition of Samurai Showdown Collection for the Switch, and this really cool Crystal Fire Emblem NES cartridge from the Fire Emblem Collector's Edition, also for the Switch. One last thing to note is this super cool Final Fantasy 11 clock. I believe it's not working right now, but it is just a super cool Final Fantasy 11 collectible. Alright, now let's be real. This is what you guys all wanted to see and talk about, and that is the massive games wall. So in my last game room, I was not able to have one big wall. I had to have things split up in a few different areas just due to the shape of the room. But here I was able to go out of my way and completely create one massive library wall with pretty much my entire collection. Starting off in the top left, I have a bunch of movies and anime, starting out with a couple of like live action regular movies, and then the rest is all anime, going into my Pokémon collection, which is a small subset of my Pokémon collection, but I do have some Burger King Gold cards, some cool actually sealed vintage playset. I don't know if you can see it, there's a lot of glare on it, but it's a cool Palo World playset, the Japanese versions of both blue and green, and these complete inbox old school Gen 1 figures, as well as like an old player's guide, and then there's a Ken Sugimori art book back there, which is very fun. And then moving down here, I've got more anime, a lot of retro anime. It's pretty much all retro anime. What I try to do is only collect things that I would use in this room, so it's retro anime to watch on the CRT. For more modern anime, I would either watch it digitally or get a Blu-ray. Here's my Wii collection. Lots and lots of great stuff on the Wii. Sakura Wars, we streamed that. Some other great ones. Silent Hill. Resident Evil games for the Wii are fun. Love Endless Ocean. Nights into Dreams, sadly, not a very good Nights into Dreams game, but have it nonetheless. My PSP collection. So not the biggest collection, but PSP is a console that I absolutely love and would maybe like to pick up a few more games for. I've got some imports as well. Some Phantasy Star games. Phantasy Star Portable 2 Infinite. That is a Japanese exclusive. We've got Hammer and Hero here, which has a $40 sticker on it, which it is not $40 anymore. That game has gone up quite a bit in value. This is one I got on my last trip to Japan. .hack Link. That's a PSP exclusive as well, that I just thought was so cool. I could not pass that up. And just to go back and call out a few anime because I kind of skipped over it. Some of my favorites would be, Fooly Cooly, Escaflowne, Devilman is fantastic. The original Devilman OVA. Cowboy Bebop, of course. Bleach, absolutely love Bleach. I have 3 box sets. I have pretty much all of the Gundam stuff that you're going to want to watch. The majority of the best stuff, the complete box set of both G Gundam and Zeta Gundam and Gundam Wing, and of course Stardust Memory, 8th MS Team, .hack, the full set, the whole season, an amazing anime. If you've only seen Sword Art Online, go back and watch .hack because that was the OG. Megazone, another fantastic one. I have all 3 of those. Moving down, some other hits just off the top of my head. Outlaw Star, fantastic. Otaku no Video, this is one of my all-time favorite, top 3 probably anime of all time for me. Really, really great one. Yu Yu Hakusho, some Japanese stuff. But yeah, love the classic anime, and watching it on the CRT is fantastic. Moving down here, this area is definitely odds and ends. It's not super organized outside of the WonderSwan and WonderSwan Color games. It's just some miscellaneous things like Fire Emblem for the Famicom, as well as this Shin Megami Tensei game, also for the Famicom. Here we have a very, very small selection of PS Vita games, as well as just randomly a Seinfeld box set. I absolutely love Seinfeld, although it's not game related. And I already talked about the WonderSwan Collection and the WonderSwan Collection video, but some classics off the top of my head would be like Mr. Driller has been a lot of fun. I also had a ton of fun playing front mission on the WonderSwan color after backlight modding the screen. This is a really great game that is definitely playable, I'd say, if you don't even understand Japanese, or if you understand a little bit of Japanese. It's very, very playable. I was able to get through it pretty well with my skill level in Japanese. So those are some cool little WonderSwan color games. And then we've got my Shenmue collection. Lots and lots of Shenmue collectibles here. The Phoenix Mirror, of course, and the Sword of 7 Stars, as well as some little standees and limited run collector's editions of Shenmue 3. Those are just fun to have. And then I've got my Dreamcast collection, starting off with my Dreamcast imports. I don't have a ton of Dreamcast imports, but of course, you know, I've got Shenmue. I've also got What's Shenmue, which for some reason will not boot on my Dreamcast, even when using the region-free bootloader. So I was kind of bummed about that because I really wanted to play What's Shenmue, which is a demo disc where you go find the president of Sega. Guilty Gear X is another fun import. So just a couple of imports, but not too many. But I have a nice collection of US Dreamcast games. Just so much stuff on the Dreamcast. That's amazing. You know, Soul Calibur, Phantasy Star Online, Dino Crisis, Quake 3. I mean, it goes on and on. Jet Grind Radio. I just love that artwork. Such a cool box art, or disc art, as you might say. Grandia 2, that's another fantastic RPG on the Dreamcast. And then the Dreamcast section transitions into Sega Saturn. Again, you guys know I'm a huge fan of the Saturn. These are pretty much all imports, with a few US games down here below that I'll get into in a bit. But first, going back up to all the imports. So just tons of stuff. I mean, Christmas Nights, the Versus games, X-Men versus Street Fighter, Children of the Atom, Sonic Jam, Princess Crown. I mean, there's so much stuff. Deep Fear, Radiant Silver Gun, Nights into Dreams. I think I said Christmas Nights already. Puyo Puyo, the original Grandia. I mean, gosh, so much stuff. Some racing games, Vampire Hunter, Burning Rangers, Virtua Fighter. It goes on and on, but Import Saturn is my jam. I absolutely love going to Japan and picking up import games. I've also started picking up import games for the original PS1 because I think that is a fun console to collect imports for that not a lot of people talk about. Everybody talks about Sega Saturn imports, but very few people talk about PS1 imports. And there's lots of great stuff to be found. Popa LaCroix is an amazing RPG series. Very cool, unique artwork. Some of the best pixel art I've ever seen, honestly, on any console. Really great 2D sprite work. Here I've got my just a few more imports for PS1, and then going into all of my Black Label PS1 games, as well as a couple of Green Label greatest hits like Crash and just a few odds and ends. Symphony of the Night, of course, fantastic game that I played through for Halloween a couple years ago. But yeah, you know, just the basic stuff, all the Final Fantasies, some other Square games and Square Enix games, Harvest Moon, Guardians Crusade is a great little hidden gem for an RPG. But I love the original PS1. And then I got Longbox Games for the Saturn as well as the PS1. I sold some of my PS1 Longbox games because I needed some extra cash, and honestly, I just wasn't playing them. They weren't games I was particularly fond of, so I've got a couple still, just 4 now, but I got rid of the others. And then I have some Saturn games, so just some ones that I could get that I could actually afford, like Tomb Raider. Panzer Dragoon I actually picked up before it was as expensive as it is now. Now it's really expensive, but at the time it was one of the affordable games. And then Sonic 3D Blast, which I highly recommend checking out because it has a unique soundtrack different than the Sega Genesis version, and the soundtrack is insanely good. I played this on a stream as well, and everybody was digging the soundtrack. Then I've got a small selection of Wii U games. Nothing crazy, most of this stuff has been ported, but I am a fan of the Wii U. It's not a console that I played when it came out. It's one that actually a friend gifted to me many years later. Was like, hey, I'm getting rid of this thing, you want it? And I said, yes, absolutely. And then I picked up a bunch of cheap games for it at GameStop when you could still get Wii U games at GameStop. So that was a fun little journey collecting for that console. And then back up top here, we've got my boxed N64 collection and my boxed Game Boy Advance collection. So the way that I do these is I have the boxes, I display them, the manuals are in there, and they're all in plastic protected cases. But what I actually do for playing the games is I display them on these 3D printed shelves so that I'm not constantly opening and closing the original boxes and damaging the boxes that way. Same thing for Game Boy Advance and Game Boy. You'll see that they're all on these 3D printed shelves, and it's a nice little display, but it most importantly leaves the games easily accessible, so you're not like, you know, dog-earing those cardboard boxes every time you open them. For N64, I also have quite a few import games. They're on the front shelf here, like Animal Crossing, Dobutsu no Mori. It's a really easy console to play imports for. It's a very easy mod. You just need to swap basically like the opening of the shell, and then you can play imports. So it's just a fun console to collect imports for, since it's so easy to get region free. Here I have some complete in-box Japanese Game Boy Color games, as well as Japanese Game Boy Advance games. These are a lot of games that I picked up when I was in Japan. Shining Soul there for the Game Boy Advance. That is a game I loved when I was a kid. I actually discovered that game on emulators. And Puyo Pop Fever, another really great puzzle game. And then I've got my complete in-box DS collection. So DS and 3DS are consoles that pretty much my whole collection is complete in box. These are mostly games that I've had, you know, since I was a kid, but I've picked up a few over the years. Some rarities like the Dark Spire, which is a really cool dungeon crawler, kind of Etrian Odyssey style game. Sadly, I do have some sealed games like this one, Away Shuffle Dungeon, that I've still never opened, but the majority of it I have opened and I have played. My new thing is to really not collect any more games until I've played the ones that I have, so I'm really working on that. 999, fantastic game in the Zero Escape series for the original DS. Chrono Trigger on the DS, people swear by this version of Chrono Trigger. I got that one before it was expensive as well. Here's one that not a lot of people talk about. Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans is an amazing RPG on the DS, and maybe my favorite Dragon Ball Z video game. Really, really underrated hidden gem there. Some 3DS stuff, some stuff that, you know, I'm a big fan of. I can definitely say Project Cross Zone. I finally played it, and it is fantastic. If you're a fan of any of the games that are featured, like Dot Hack, Mega Man, Devil May Cry, Street Fighter, it is such a cool, interesting concept that mixes all those games together and characters from those games. Etrian Odyssey Nexus, I stand by as, you know, it's the best dungeon crawler ever made on any console. Really, really amazing game. Again, here I've just got the GBA and Game Boy Color games out on display. Some highlights would, I guess, be Pokemon Crystal. I've got Pokemon Gold, Pokemon Blue, the Japanese version, Silver. So quite a few Pokemon games here. I do have Emerald, Ruby, and Sapphire, as well as Leaf Green. Unfortunately, the Emerald is a pirated version. I was kind of bummed to find that out, but the rest of them are all authentic, including a Japanese Fire Red over there as well. And then for some of the Game Boy Color games down here, I've also got a second copy of Crystal. I always forget I have two of those. Metal Gear Solid for the Game Boy Color. Very, very cool Metal Gear Solid game that is getting quite rare and expensive. And then here I have my strategy guide collection. Lots of old school strategy guides, like, of course, You know, you got your Phantasy Star Online strategy guide, some Pokémon strategy guides. This is a really cool little Japanese magazine called Continue. That's a fun little one for me. And then the Vana'diel Chronicles, a really cool archive of basically this newspaper that was in Final Fantasy XI. That's a cool one. Pokemon Pinball over there. And then we're going to move over to the rest of these game consoles. So a small little collection of Xbox 360 games. This is not a system that I had when it was out, so the collection is small, but just a few things I was able to pick up on the cheap, mostly at GameStops and things like that. Moving on here, we've got PS3. Same thing, didn't play it when it was out, but I do have some favorites. Asura's Wrath. Everybody has to play this game. Amazing game. Really, really amazing game. Eye of Judgment, also a really cool card battle game using the iToy camera, I believe it was called. What other games? Oh yeah, Catherine. This is probably my favorite PS3 game next to Asura's Wrath. Really amazing Atlas puzzler. Here we have Lily's Hamtaro collection in all of its glory. Some really cool stuff, and I've always just been a huge fan of the artwork on the Japanese versions of those Hamtaro games. And now what's fun about the Hamtaro games, so you might be thinking, hey, why would I care or be interested in these Hamtaro games? Well, they were actually developed by Alpha Dream, the same developer that developed the Mario and Luigi game series, specifically the first one, Superstar Saga. And I'm not sure if they developed every single one in the series, but they developed the majority of them, as far as I understand, if not all of them, until unfortunately they went under and they're no longer around as a developer. But really fantastic developer that did a bunch of great stuff on the Game Boy Advance. Sega Genesis here, a small, humble Sega Genesis collection. I had a huge collection as a kid with a ton of rare stuff like Mega Turrican and Mazen, it's either called Mazen Saga or Mazen Fighter. But I sadly sold them all to a GameStop to fund my N64 collection. But I've collected some of the essentials. Zool is one for me I have a lot of memories with. Steel Empire, for some reason, is one that I think I just never sold as a kid. I think I lost it and then I found it before I moved, and it managed to survive. But everything else is a replacement. Sword of Vermilion, cool little RPG by Yu Suzuki, actually, of Virtua Fighter and Shenmue fame. Moving on to the Switch section. Switch is super hard to talk about because it has no spine art. It's something that drives me absolutely crazy. Guys, do you hate how Switch spines look? I feel like this is a common complaint, but it just drives me crazy that they have no defining characteristics. Some favorites would be, though, Metroid Dread. I think a fantastic entry in the Metroid series, if not one of the best games in the Metroid series. That might be controversial. You know, of course, Breath of the Wild. I don't need to tell anybody about Breath of the Wild. Everybody and their mother has played it. But, you know, the Switch to me, although I have a ton of Switch games, it's not really a system that stands out to me as I had a ton of mind-blowing experiences on it. It was a lot of trying to be excited about stuff and then failing to be excited about it. All right, now we're moving on to some of my favorite stuff. We've got the PS2 collection here. So many amazing games on the PS2. I think it's one of the best consoles ever. I mean, you've got Yakuza, Persona 3, Persona 4, those Lord of the Rings games, which are actually really solid. Flipnik, a game that nobody ever talks about. The best pinball game ever made. I stand by that. You gotta play Flipnik. Really amazing pinball game. Moving on, just so much cool stuff. Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Devil May Cry, Xenosaga, Armored Core, Onimusha, Final Fantasy, Dark Cloud, Okami, the Dot Hack quadrology. Of course, you guys know I freaking love Dot Hack. And yes, I do have Quarantine. really, really fantastic series that I would love to maybe stream or do some sort of like just video covering the series, because I think not enough people talk about these original games on the PS2. Alright, now moving on to GameCube. It starts over here. GameCube is probably my most extensive collection. It's grown a little bit since I did my GameCube collection video, but not by much. But I've got a ton of the classics, you know, like Bots and Kaitos, Paper Mario, Mario Sunshine, Super Smash Bros., Wind Waker, Resident Evil, Mario Kart, Metroid, Animal Crossing. I mean, pretty much all of the main classic games, Metroid Prime, Killer 7, Billy Hatcher, Star Fox, Resident Evil 4, Lost Kingdoms, Phantasy Star Online, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, of course. Maybe the best Sonic game ever made? I don't know, that's like a hot take, right? What else? Oh, F-Zero GX, fantastic game. Wario World as well. Soul Calibur 2. You could just go on and on. Oh, Crystal Chronicles, how could I not? It's not a it's not a Pixely video if I don't talk about Crystal Chronicles at least once. Maybe my favorite Final Fantasy game. Really fantastic. Some more GameCube over here. Star Fox Adventures, Rebel Strike. So really nice selection of GameCube games, as it is probably my favorite console of that generation. And then going back up really quick to my Phantasy Star Online collection. Absolutely love Phantasy Star Online, as you guys know. And here I've just got some art books, some of the figures, as well as the item box, and some meseta, which is the money in the game. But I really love a few things here, like this compendium of the manga, as well as the big box PC version of the game, which actually comes with a mouse pad, which is super cool. I'm not going to take it out right now, but this is actually a really, really hard find, that big box PC version. Here we've got an item box, Phantasy Star Universe as well. It has Dream Magazine from Japan. That's a Phantasy Star Online issue. So I just love having a little Phantasy Star Online collection, as it is probably my favorite game of all time. Alright, now moving on to Xbox. So for the original Xbox, didn't have it back in the day, but have been building up a sizable little collection for it. I've got some classics, you know, Otogi. This is one that is actually a From Software game. Not a lot of people talk about it, but it's a really cool game. Phantom Brave, Dino Crisis 3, big disappointment, Dino Crisis 3. Doom 3 was very, very good. I played this recently and it scared the crap out of me. I never played it when it came out. But a really fun first-person shooter, which is not a genre that I usually play. Panzer Dragoon, really great entry in the Panzer Dragoon series. Of course, the Shenmue 2 Xbox version. You know, Phantasy Star Online. Just lots of little fun stuff. I've also got the Sega GT Jet Set Radio combo disc, which everybody's got to have. Fantastic disc. And then one that I think people also forget about is Gun Valkyrie. So I have gone out of my way to try to collect a lot of the Sega games for the original Xbox. I'm missing a few, like Crazy Taxi 3, but I love collecting the Xbox Sega games, because in some ways the OG Xbox felt kind of like the Dreamcast 2 that we never got. Moving on to the NES collection as we round out the last few consoles. Nothing super rare or expensive here. Just lots of classics like Zelda, Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, some more Castlevania Punch-Out, of course, Mario Bros, Crystalis, the original Dragon Warrior, which I really loved playing until my battery died mid-playthrough, which bummed me out. Some more Mario Brothers games, so nothing crazy rare. I don't have any CIB stuff. I think the rarest one is actually, Lily randomly had Mega Man 5, which is like super, super expensive for a loose cart NES game. So I played a little bit of that. That's a fun one. But nothing too crazy on the NES. Also nothing too crazy on the Super Nintendo, although there is a fun story, which is that I'd say the majority of this collection I got in like a big bundle, like yard sale deal for what, like $70 for the console, and like a ton of games like Super Metroid and Mario and all that stuff. It was a crazy yard sale deal. Some of this stuff still needs to be cleaned, but I got really lucky getting into Super Nintendo collecting in that way, although none of it is complete in box. And if you see stuff like Earthbound, this is a reproduction cartridge. No, I do not own the original Earthbound cartridge. It is way too expensive. Another favorite for me though on the Super Nintendo was Super Mario RPG. Absolutely love the art style in this game. Really fun little RPG. Now moving on to my books and magazines, this is probably one of my favorite sections. I have a bunch of Nintendo Powers here, some other magazines like Retro Gamer magazine, some books. This is a really cool book. This is a really cool book on Sega consoles. I'll just throw it open here so you guys can see. Give it a little flip through. Really cool artwork and photographs of a lot of Sega hardware with some really great graphic design and artwork. It's got box arts and things like that in there. Oh, look at this cool Vector Man art. Really fantastic book. I will have to find the name and put the name of this in the video description if I can't find it right now. Yes, it's Sega Mega Drive and Genesis Collected Works by Keith Stewart. Really recommend this book. But yeah, I've just got some odds and ends here. More issues of Shenmue World. These random old Nintendo catalogs from the early 2000s that they gave away for free at my local GameStop. And probably my favorite book in my whole gaming collection is A Guide to Japanese Role-Playing Games by Bitmap Books. This book is just absolutely fantastic. It goes into so many JRPGs that nobody ever talks about in the West, specifically PC games for things like the PC-88 and PC-98. This game is like a treasure trove of JRPG knowledge if you are a fan of the genre. Highly recommend this if you can track it down. And in this corner is one of my favorite additions to the game room that I did not have space for in the previous game room, and that is a retro PC and a whole station for the retro PC and the games in that collection. So I've got a Sony Vaio with Windows XP and a Pentium 4. I think it's got about 2 gigabytes of RAM. It's got 3 hard drives in it, so tons and tons of storage space. And I have the matching Sony Vaio monitor, the Vaio mouse, as well as the Vaio speakers, and of course, you guys know, the Vaio keyboard. So I have the whole setup, everything matching for the Vaio, and I absolutely love it. It looks fantastic. I wish I could have got a CRT monitor, but the Vaio CRTs are crazy expensive now, so I kind of missed the boat on those. But these flat panels are a bit more affordable, and they still look decent, especially for playing retro games on them. For the games, I don't have a ton of retro PC games just yet, but I have a couple. Master of Orion, Need for Speed I actually got at a thrift store for $1.98 a couple weeks ago, so that was a really cool find. Warcraft 3, Diablo 2, some Japanese games, not games, but actually Japanese studying material, and then a few other games here, Warcraft 2, Age of Empires, Blade Runner I picked up recently. I've been meaning to play this. This is supposed to be really cool. Then I've also got The Sims, Age of Mythology, Knights of the Old Republic. Knights of the Old Republic, I don't know if it will run very well on this computer. And then I've got Half-Life 2 and Half-Life 1. Half-Life 2, I was really bummed out to find those versions of the game. Even though I have V-Discs, are basically bricked because they require Steam and they have DRM, and the version of Steam that comes with these games and is compatible with Windows XP no longer validates. So those games are sadly basically bricked even though you own them. So I hate DRM, and that's kind of the worst, but it's thankfully really only these games that have that issue. Actually, Phantasy Star Universe is also bricked by DRM, so kind of a bummer, but most of the games work just fine. Here I have a collection of soundtracks, mostly video game and anime soundtracks. Just a few things like this Persona Labyrinth promo disc, the Dot Hack soundtrack that my friend Shar gave me, which I absolutely love that soundtrack. Of course, a bunch of Phantasy Star soundtracks, like Phantasy Star Online 3, excuse me. Fooly Cooly and a couple things like that. But I'd love to pick up some more video game soundtracks as well as anime soundtracks. And then I've just got some miscellaneous collectibles as well as my Sony stereo in my favorite color, with my favorite color orange. Faye Valentine perfume. This is like a random collectible I picked up at the Bandai Namco Cross store, I think, when I was in Japan. They had a little Cowboy Bebop section, this Dragon Ball vintage Goku figure that I picked up at Mandarake, and then this Dot Hack standee, and also the Final Fantasy XI soundtrack with this awesome Yoshitaka Amano artwork on it. And that is pretty much it for the Retro PC Station. And then in this corner, I just have a couple of posters, Phantasy Star Online and Akira. And then I have this cabinet with Gundam stuff in it, starting up top with the 1/60 scale Gundam Wing. This one's not painted, maybe it will be one day, but the rest are painted. I don't have my trophies in here anymore like I did in the last Game Room Tour, but this one placed in GBWC, so that was 2 years ago, and that's the GP01FB, my custom painted job in diorama. And then the Rickdom 2, this one by local GBWC, but did not place nationally, which was a bummer, but it was still really fun to build and put together. And then these are actually two of my favorite. I don't know why, but when I look at them, I just think I really like how these ones came out. Just an RX-78 to entry grade, and then this one is a Silver Bullet that I did a custom paint job on. And this version of the O that also has a custom paint job and some additional elements that I added to it. So really love this little display cabinet. It couldn't fit in my hobby room with all my Gundam stuff, so it ended up here in my retro game room. And now last but not least, for some bonus content, my closet. I am a huge fan of this closet. I have always wanted a great place to organize and store all of my extra stuff that I don't want to display or can't display, and I've never had a good way to store it until now. So I am very proud of how this closet came out. It is overall really well organized, nice and neat. It could definitely there's some places for improvement, like I have these cables and mic stands on the floor. That's just stuff I use for live streaming and making YouTube videos. Could find a better place for that, but for the majority of the stuff, it's all super organized and easy to get to, and I absolutely love it. It's just a huge lifesaver having this closet in this room. Alright, so over here I've got some spare consoles. Like I said, I hot swap out the consoles. So I've got a Famicom, Sega CD with a Genesis Model 2. Up here I've also got a couple of NESs, as well as my mini PS1 in the carrying case. And then I've also got extra Dreamcast, my Super Nintendo, which is not working right now. It has a capacitor issue, which is a bummer. Model 1 Genesis, an extra N64, a friend gave me, extra PS2, PS3. Unfortunately, it is the fat, but it's not the one with full backwards compatibility for PS2. And then I've just got some miscellaneous things here, another extra GameCube with the GameCube carrying case. And then here I just keep all my extra cables and things like that to keep everything nice and neat and organized. Like I said, I've got some stands and things like that for streaming. Here I've got an extra Sony Vaio monitor, and this is actually a TV behind it. So sometimes if I want to do something like, say, hook up 2 GameCubes with the LAN adapter to play something like Double Dash or Kirby's Air Ride or 1080, any of the LAN games, or even online Phantasy Star Online, and you both play online but hang out in the same room together, I'll bust out this TV for that and an extra GameCube, and that's always a lot of fun. For gaming stuff, I also have keyboards for my console, so my Dreamcast keyboards. I think one of these is for Xbox, one of those is for PS2. Here I have some PC graphics cards, as I was trying to upgrade the graphics card for that Sony Vaio. I've got my Phantasy Star figures and my Playdate box back there, which reminds me that I forgot to show you guys my handheld bin, which has all my handhelds in it. But just some miscellaneous boxes for different things, like my TurboGrafx Mini, my full box set with that hard drive for Final Fantasy XI for PS2, the Sega Saturn racing wheel box, of course the keyboard controller for the GameCube. You guys know I love that thing. Yeah, just some random boxes, odds and ends, Virtua Stick box, and then, you know, PS3, Xbox 360 boxes. And then I've just got some like plastic containers with a few more odds and ends up there up top. And then over here, I have all my card game stuff, my tabletop gaming stuff, like Pokemon trading card gaming stuff, like the starter gift box, which is a replacement one, and then I've got the beat up one, super beat up one from my childhood. Yeah, D&D, more D&D board games, Pathfinder, Descent, some more D&D board games, and then like Magic the Gathering stuff, and then just like extra cards and binders and stuff for D&D. And that's pretty much it for the closet, but I think there's probably room for more stuff, which is awesome. I love having extra room rather than not enough room. One other thing is that hack trading card game. This is something nobody talks about, and to be honest, I have never played, but I would love to play. All right, now before I forget, I did mention I have a handheld bin, and this is just a little bin that I find it's handy to put all of my handheld consoles. Most everything is organized into Ziploc bags just to keep the consoles separate. I don't need to go through all of this for you, but it's just stuff like the original DS, you know, Game Boy Advance SP, Switch. A lot of stuff is in carrying cases. Really, probably could be better organized for this video, but I like to keep the handhelds in a bin because it's very hard to store those consoles otherwise. I find they take up a ton of space, so that is the handheld bin. That's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and please leave a thumbs up, and feel free to come hang out on Discord and check out the member section for exclusive videos. Alright, see you in the next one. Bye!